I'd like to call the Public Services Committee to order. First item is the Pledge of Allegiance, and will Candace please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Need a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Drolet, support by Kraft. Please vote to adopt the agenda. The agenda is adopted. Item 4, approval of minutes. We need a motion for that. Moved by Romano, supported by Lucido. Please vote on the minutes. Item 5, public participation. Anyone from the public wish to address his body? Anyone from the public? Seeing no one from the public, we'll close that portion of the agenda. Might as well get up again. Presentation.
Some of my staff might want to get up and say,
Public
hey, she's doing a
Works,
great job.
Infrastructure update. Candace.
Brian might want to do that. Oh, no. Sit down, Brian.
You guys are... All yours, Candace.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate the invitation to be here. Chairman Myjack called me and asked me to come and present to his committee here, to all of you, about some of the things that are going on in the Public Works office. And truth be told, I could probably be up here for hours. So he also probably knew that and called me and said, we are going to decide what you'll be talking about here. It's just the interest of time. So I thought we would just cover two items, but obviously we're here to answer any questions about anything that we're doing over there. And we got a bazillion things going on, as all of you that participate in the drain boards know. There's so many different projects and things that are happening there, and it's just a very exciting time, I think. I was just telling Commissioner Drolet that he said, well, this is rag balls and all this stuff that's inside our little brochure here. But, God, we put a video up about the rag balls, and, I mean, we have like 200,000 hits. It's amazing how interested people are in a lot of the things that are going on at the Public Works. So we have really tried to do a lot of outreach. And you all just got a copy of this, and we put this out a couple times a year, which then we put out at the in the different clerk's offices around the county and libraries and that, which is just sort of an update on some of the various things that we're doing at our department. We're really trying to feed our Facebook all the time and our website and et cetera, and really do a lot of public education and public awareness. And we're going to be doing some things going out into the high schools, and here I am already getting off track. I better get on to what I was here to speak about. So if I can figure out the technology here, there's two items we thought we'd talk about. And the first thing is the what's happening with the possible lawsuit regarding the sinkhole. And as you all remember, I certainly do vividly, 3 or 4 days before I took this office, we had a interceptor collapse on 15 Mile Road. And that happened actually on Christmas Eve, when you had these folks in this house that you see all this on your, okay. So these folks that live in that home had called 911 about 4 o'clock in the morning. They heard this pop, 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 popping sound, which was the sound of bricks popping off of their house, as their house was literally sinking into a sinkhole. So you can imagine that ruined their holiday. But when we first look at this entire thing, people at that time were saying that this was going to be a 3-year project, going to be, $150 million. Nobody really knew. The numbers were wild. And so we were very proud that we were able to complete this project in less than a year, and actually for around a little over $70 million. So on time and under budget, which is, doesn't get any better in government, let's face it, right? So then I had some folks that said to me, they said, we'll probably never really know what happened there. And I said, well, why won't we know? Well, you never really know how these things go. This is the 3rd time this has happened there. And I said, well, no, we are going to know. We need to know. And the ratepayers need to know why this thing has happened 3 times, essentially in the same stretch of pipe. So what we did is we went out, we hired my first thought was I want to make sure I get an engineer who's renowned, nationally renowned, to come in and do a forensic evaluation of actually what did happen there. Because one of the things that I found, and no disrespect to any of our engineers here, this is just part of the culture, it's this guy used to work for that guy, then they work for that agency, and they all, everybody, it's the fraternity, just like the attorney fraternity here, right? It's the same thing with the fraternity of engineers. Everybody knows somebody. It's very incestuous. And I wanted to have someone who didn't have a dog in the hunt and could take a look at this thing and tell us. Not somebody that was going to get some work out of it or anything else. So we, as the Commissioner Myjack knows very well, we went out and we got this guy, Gary Brierly, who's from Colorado, Denver. And, I mean, his resume is literally 10 pages long. I mean, this is a guy. If you go to any national seminars or whatever, he's presenting usually. He's the man. And so he took a look at this thing. It's interesting to note, just one thing. In 1978, there was a collapse. And in 2004, there was a collapse. And then, of course, ours on 2016. None of the three had anything to do with one another. Every time they were a different reason. And if people would stop dinking around with this poor pipe, it would be okay. But in the 1978, there was what they call the Fraser connection. So there was a shaft dug, and they did this. They were connecting the city of Fraser to this pipe, and it was not done very well. And as a result of that, they had a collapse then. They had a sinkhole then. And part of that fix, and I tell you this because you're going to want to know it for this next slide here, is this is an 11-foot interceptor, and part of this fix in 78 was to put in a stretch of 8-foot pipe because they were trying to save money or I don't know what all at that time. So there's a small stretch of 8-foot pipe. Then in 2004, there was a collapse from actually the invert, the bottom of the pipe, because of different problems that they had, but had nothing to do with the one that happened in 78. Then in 2016, what happened here? And some of you, I'm sure, have read the reports, and both Commissioner Smith and Commissioner Myjack were when I did my press conference, so they saw all of this already. But essentially what happened here, we believe. Let me see what my next slide is. Okay, the next slide, let me go back to this. What you're looking at here with the interceptor collapse location, the green is OMID, the Oakland Macomb Interceptor Drainage District, the mid, which is the orange, that's 11 communities in Macomb County. OMID is 14 communities in Oakland County. But anyway, our mid goes into the OMID and then eventually shoots down to Detroit for treatment. OMID was doing some work. They actually a huge project, $170 million in a number of different phases. Great work, a project that had to be done. But as they were doing this work, they would there's a series of gates, and they would close these gates so that they could hold back the flow so that the workers could get into the pipe and work. It's all great, but there are protocols that you have to follow when you open the gates to release the flow again. And anybody, Commissioner Smith and I were talking about, that's the first thing you learned when you were a fireman, right? How to release a fire hydrant because of water hammers. Well, in this case, what happened here was a water hammer because this is human error where the protocols were not followed. And they released the flow where it should have been released, for instance, over several hours, maybe 4 or 5 hours. It was released in 7 minutes in one particular instance. And there were other instances as well. And you can see on this slide, which is essentially telling you the hydraulic grade line versus time, which is at the bottom. Anyway, you don't have to be an engineer to see these spikes, the one in particular that spiked way up. In very technical terms, that spike is bad, bad. And so essentially what happened, I'm going to go back to the other one. If you're looking at this red again, or excuse me, the orange again, and you see our little slide, it says sinkhole location, where it's showing you there where the sinkhole happened, just on the other side of Hayes and 15 Mile Road. So OMID, they let the flow happen. The stuff rushes down like a giant tsunami down going east, traveling east on 15 Mile. It hits the corner of Romeo, bounces back and it hits the 8-foot restriction. And what happened then was like a bomb went off. It was like a bomb went off. There was so much pressure there. And as a result of that, and it took about 2.5 years to manifest, really. So you get some hairline fractures in there. People will even tell you if they had done inspections at that time. It's almost like concrete sometimes. It could open, then it could close again. I mean, maybe you wouldn't have seen it. I don't know. But anyway, nobody knew what was happening. So in that case, it didn't happen in the invert like it did in '04. Now in 2016, it happened at the crown of the, and you can tell from the aerial pictures in that how the sink, how it happened there. Anyway, this has all been and is in a very extensive report, a forensic report, and I just wanted to tell you about this because what do you do with the information, Mr. Attorney? What would you do with it, right? You can guess what Joe Viviano said we need to do with this. So I said, look, the ratepayers, if there's any chance at all for them to be to recoup some of this expense, we need to try to do that. Now we have this report. Now, of course, there's going to be varying opinions. Everyone's not going to say, oh yeah, that's what happened, here's some money. But we subsequently served then OMID. We served 3 different companies that worked on the OMID, saying that, you know, put your insurance carrier on notice. We intend to claim against this, which we have done. So in the interim now, we're waiting to see. I kept saying, you know, look, and I have kept telling them, look, we're reasonable people. We're willing to negotiate. This happened. You do carry insurance. You know, you might have a car accident, but guess what? That's why you have insurance, right? Accidents happen. And you pay a lot of money for it, and you know somebody needs to claim against it once in a while. That's why everybody has it. So we were hoping that the insurance carrier would consolidate and use one attorney. I don't know if that's going to happen. We haven't heard from the 3 companies. We only heard from the attorney that's working for OMID, who sent us last week what I consider to be a very adversarial missive. And so, you know what? It's on their call. That's fine. If we got to go to court, we're going to go to court, because I'm not just going to say we're going to try to negotiate. You don't want to do it? Fine. You want to go to court in Macomb County with Macomb County judges, with Macomb County jurors? Okay. We'll see. I'll roll the dice on that one. And anyway, so I just wanted to let you all be aware of what is happening there. So that's that's our current status. We're not quite sure how it will go. Okay. So that's sort of in the past, right? Although we now we have this possible litigation looking at us. Then I thought we would talk about something really in the future and where we're going. And again, most of you that have been to the Drain Board meeting sort of already know about a lot of this, but here's the truth. You know, when I left Congress, people said, you're going to run for Macomb County Public Works? Why? What are you doing? Why is your interest in that particular office? And you know, I lived on the Clinton River, and I've been on this water my entire life. I'm going to be 65 this year. I'm watching all these combined sewer overflows going by, and I said, you know what? We don't have to live this way. We do not have to live this way. And I think people haven't really addressed this because it's a bit overwhelming, quite frankly, the cost. But regardless of that, I mean, I have grandchildren, grandchildren. Maybe they'd like to go to the beach, okay? So we just can't keep doing this. And many of us will say, well, you know, Oakland County is dumping their combined sewer overflows on us. That's true. But when I tell Jim Nash, oh, you know, you got to stop doing that, he's like, what about you? Which is true. We do not have clean hands here, so we need to clean up our own backyard. And I'm very focused. I'm very committed to this. In the county, there are only a couple of places that discharge now. And no surprise, it's not particularly inherent here in Macomb. It's everywhere, where the older communities still have combined sewers. So the combined sewers, of course, is when you get a very heavy wet weather event, whether it's rain or snow melt or what have you. The existing sewers just don't have the capacity to handle it all. So optimally, it would be best to separate these sewers. And in many places that has been done. The city of Mount Clemens actually assessed themselves over a 10-year period, and they separated their sewers. In the newer communities, they don't build these systems this way anymore, so you don't have that problem. In Clinton Township, they are under a court order, actually, through the MDEQ to clean up. They were a very bad actor in Macomb County, and they had 8 different areas that they had to work on, and they're on number 8 now. So over the last 25 years, and for $25 million paid for by the citizens, the ratepayers in Clinton Township, they have cleaned up their, they are almost done, and hats off to them. It's a fantastic thing. And I keep telling Cannon he needs to talk about it more because it's just so great, I think. Warren has their own issues, and they have severe, significant issues. And the city of Warren is moving ahead on a plan, which I think is good. Although I got to tell you the truth, I don't think it's going to solve all their problem. But still, at least they're on a path here, and they've agreed to pay for some of that. That leaves 2 areas that the Macomb County Public Works Commission has jurisdiction over. One is called Chapaton, which is our big pump station down at 9 Mile and Jefferson. This station only handles St. Clair Shores and East Point. A lot of people think it's a whole county or something. It's not. It's only St. Clair Shores and East Point. Then we have one other retention basin, which is called the Martin Retention, which handles about almost 90% of it is Roseville. So this is an old basin built back in '68. It's got 28 million gallons of retention. Any of you that ever drove, if you ever go to dinner at Fishbones and park behind the basin, you're parking on the retention. The detention is underneath that parking lot there. Or if you do the St. Clair Shores Parade, that's the staging area, right? These pumps are enormous, but we have to discharge. We still continue to discharge. We discharge combined sewer overflows on a very regular basis. It's treated. We're not in violation of any of our permits. Our permits that are required by the MDEQ, we're meeting our permits, but we are still discharging, and we've been discharging for decades, and I hope we can find the political will to stop discharging, because I am very focused on this. This next slide will just give you a couple of the bigger things that have done over the years. One in particular was a canal expansion that happened in '03. So there's a small bit where they moved the gates, what we call the outfall. So that gave them another, I think, 3 million additional storage by that. So what can happen here? So first of all, we have this video because if Vince, how do you run the video? Huh? What?
Spacebar.
Where's that? Oh, spacebar right here? All right. All right, this video was taken a year ago. There was still ice cover. This is at the end of a street called Rio Vista in St. Clair Shores. And this is the Martin Retention. But the same thing happens at Chapaton. And this is going to, you just watch it here. The water was very clear then, right? Because the ice cover still. And we had just gotten, Vince got a new drone, so he wanted to play with it, and got this video. But you're going to see something here, okay? There you go. This happens every time there's a wet weather event.
Much more clear with the ice than not ice, right? So.
This is what's going on. Every time there's a wet weather event, out into our beautiful Lake St. Clair.
Yesterday and the day before with that heavy rain?
Yes, that's what you're looking at. Been going on for decades. Honestly. This is 2019, okay? This is crazy, crazy. So something has to happen. Now, if you were to separate the sewers, as I say would be optimal in St. Clair Shores or East Point, we figure it'll be about $340 million to do that. Well, you know what? You can't bankrupt the city. I mean, it can't happen. It can't happen. So what could happen other than that? So we've looked at Chapaton. This slide here will show you sort of where we are here with Chapaton. You can see the canal that goes out. There's a boat launch. Let me see, I forget what all these slides are. Okay, this is maybe a little bit better. This shows you here. So you're looking at it essentially from the lake and going in. Now, remember, the Shore Club tower is right next to it. So you can see at the upper right-hand part of this slide where the existing outfall gate is that was built, again, in '03 to give them another 3 million gallons of retention. So we looked at this. I think this spit of land was built when they dredged this canal, and then they just put the fill over there or something. And so there's really nothing that goes on out there. Some fishermen come occasionally. There's a bazillion geese. Other than that, there's not much that goes on there. And we're looking at this. First of all, I wanted you to all look at this because I know you're all interested in additional facilities for the county, for county parks, right? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we can make a deal. But there's a price, okay? So, anyway, so we're trying to figure out what we're going to want to do here. What we're thinking about doing, and we've already budgeted this. We went through a bid process. We just awarded a bid to Wade Trim, is the principal engineer. There's a team, though, of engineers that are looking at doing something on this point. So we are moving ahead with this. And what we want to do is move that outfall all the way down to where, before the marina starts on Shore Point, and put the gates down there. And what you're looking at actually is a rendering of sort of a wetlands type of thing where you would plant vegetation that could live through when the thing is flooded. But a lot of the time, hopefully most of the time, be dry. But in the heavy wet weather, you'd be able to flood this area here, and until it got to, obviously, to a certain height, and then it goes. Then we'd still have to discharge. But this will give us, we think, how many? 12? 20 million. Excuse me. Yes, right. 20 million, an additional 20 million gallons of storage, retention. So we're quite excited with this. We're looking at, would we move the boat launch to the end here where people could, although I'm a little hesitant with that because I think this spit of land, even with this wetlands area, could really be utilized for county residents. You could do all kinds of things out there. I mean, I don't know where else you have land going out into the lake that could be used for fishing, for concerts, for whatever. And I'd really like to incorporate this with our high schools, with their environmental classes, et cetera, to have kids come out and see how this works and the wetlands and why you're trying, water quality, et cetera. The Detroit Zoo, of course, is going to do this new Great Lakes Nature Center. There's so much curriculum, presentation, it could be a fantastic thing, really. And at the same time, we're doing what we need to do for the lake. So there's that idea. Anyway, this is just, again, it's sort of showing you some of the different parts that are on that. We'll see how all of that goes, but we are under design right now. Now, is this a video too? Spacebar, okay. So this will give you a little bit better vision of coming from the lake. Now you're coming from the lake, looking at when we move these gates, and then how this thing will look. So, give you an idea of that. See, this is existing right now. So all we're doing is sort of replicating that, although in a much bigger way. And again, I think the thing could be laid out very nice so that you could really have public access here. And just to preempt, if there's a question about smell and that, the people that are living in these very expensive condos there right now, they've never complained ever because they already have the same thing. And so we're not worried about that. So this just sort of goes through where we are, blah, blah, blah. We think this particular project would be about $20 million, give us 20 million gallons additionally. The design going to take about a year, and then construction to begin, a year from now, essentially. So we're moving ahead on this. I will tell you one thing. We did get $3 million from the state during the lame duck. You don't need to know all the gory details of how that happened, but we got $3 million. Phil knows the story behind that, but he'll keep it to himself. And so it's a downstroke, right, from the state. And I'm looking for money from anybody to help us with this so that we can. Okay, now is this also a video?
No, the next slide.
Oh, the next slide. Okay, the next slide. So there's two parts to our idea here. This next thing could give us another 10 to 15 million gallons. So the two projects, the one that I just showed you and the one I'm going to tell you now, we're guesstimating about $30 million. which is a lot of money, but it's a lot less than $340 million. And so we've got $3 million already. We have $1.5 million that was already budgeted for the design work. So last week I had Representative Andy Levin came out. We gave him a tour of Chapaton. He's very excited about helping us with this. Senator Stabenow has been on site. She's very excited about helping us with this, and Gary Peters has agreed to come, Senator Peters. So, we're looking for our federal partners. There's some various pots of money. I'm going to go back to the state again. I was up there last week, and as you know, and met with Speaker Chatfield and Majority Leader Shirkey, and we'll see what we can do here. So anyway, there's an existing pipe, of course, that feeds Chapaton. Again, that's about 12 feet. Is it 12 feet? 12-foot diameter. That was put in many, many, many years ago, and we thought, well, rather than tearing up everybody's yards and spending all this money for these to separate the sewers, could we use what we already have? So what we did is we put flow meters in our pipe here strategically, so we could see how much, when we have a lot of rainfall, do we use the whole capacity of this big pipe. And what we found is in a heavy rainfall, we had 38 inches that were being used, which meant we have huge amounts of capacity in there. So now we're talking about putting in gates, and the red lines here are at least 2, potentially 3 gates that we would put in that we can hold the flow back. And so that's going to be phase 2 of this project. And this is going to be a little video that will give you an idea of, all right, how does it go? Space bar, whoops. Okay. I'm hitting the space bar, it's not going. You knew something was going to happen, right?
Oh, there we go.
Oh, yeah, hit that.
No. Almost.
All right, that's too bad. I don't know. We went through this thing a number of times. This thing would have showed you, obviously the water level at the bottom. When we put the gate down, the water level will rise behind the gate until such time as it spills over the top. And so we're looking at 2 or 3 of these gates. And of course, obviously, you got to design the thing so that it spills over the top so it doesn't flood everybody's basements, which would really be bad. So anyway, but this could give us another 10 to 15 million additional gallons of retention. Between the 2 of these, we think that we could reduce, not eliminate our combined sewer overflows, but we could reduce somewhere in the 70 percentile of what is happening with combined sewer overflows, which would be enormous. After 5 decades of this, to be able to do this in a couple of years, unbelievable progress. There'd still be, depends on the years, if it's sort of a dry year, you might never overflow. So this is at Chapaton, and when we're done with this, then we're going to look at Martin, which I showed you where that video is Martin. So these are the 2 things that Macomb County is looking for. Anyway, we're looking for money. Funding needs, we need money. Who came up with that crazy picture with investors possibly? That had to be Dan. Huh? Was that you?
The same day, couldn't get the video to work.
Well, okay. Anyway, that's just 2 things. As I say, I know Brian's got to get up here too. So I just wanted to show you an idea of, not an idea, but something that is, we are going to get this done. And we're looking for help. And I know you guys are looking at the jail, and you got so many other funding needs and everything. But we have been talking about the blue economy and what it means to, this might be St. Clair Shores and East Point and Roseville, but people in Sterling Heights go to the beach, people in Clinton Township go to the beach. And so I do think it's appropriate to come up here and ask you to consider some sort of level of participation. And I don't have a number in my head right now, and I'm obviously also talking to the county exec's office. But I'd like you all to think about it, because I think it's this kind of a thing has changed the whole culture here, and it will allow us then, when we get this cleaned up, to go to Oakland County and say, our good friends in Oakland County, you can stop dumping your combined sewer overflows in the Red Run drain goes down the Clinton River, goes out to Lake St. Clair. This has to change. It has to change. So anyway, that's just
Thank you,
one of the
Candace.
things. Yes.
Seems like, yeah, we've been sailing this ship for a long time. Since 1968, this was opened by Hubert Humphrey, Vice President, and we have to change that. I mean, we were on the Blue Ribbon Commission together, you and I, back in the 90s, and we knew about all this stuff back then, and nothing's been done about it.
Nothing.
No one's wanted to touch it, look at it, attack it, and maybe people just not wanting to go that way because of politics, of the cost, I don't know. Let me just ask you a question, because we had Andy Levin there, and you said Stabenow and Peters there as well. And you're a congressperson, it's a $30 million project, we need 26.5 more. What are the chances that we get something from Congress, and how much, if you had to guesstimate? And what are you looking at?
Well, back in the day when we used to earmark, this could be an earmarked project. And I think, actually, I had some hope that the Congress would go back to earmarking this session. But this year, they are not going to do that. They just announced they're not going to do that, but they're going to revisit that next year. I personally believe these are the kinds of projects that should be earmarked, quite frankly. And I was always a fan of going back to earmarking. There were abuses, the bridge to nowhere and some of these other things, and because of that, they stopped earmarking. But, I mean, then you give all the authority to the bureaucrats, right? And members of Congress who have the wallet can't even appropriate for various things like this that are unusual, but yet have a huge regional impact. So that, I don't know, that could be next year, maybe. In addition to that, I've said, is there any way to look at some of the Army Corps of Engineers funding that they have for various water projects? They did pass, the House and the Senate has passed a WRDA bill, the Water Resources Development Act. I think they put a $500 million pot into that. Of course, that's nationwide, right? Nationwide. So, but we only need a couple million, would be good, But, we're looking at everything. There's a couple of pots of money under the Energy and Commerce that might be a potential. And in addition to that, I keep saying, this, in my mind, would be a great candidate for a no-match, ideally, no-match, Great Lakes Restoration Initiative grant, GLRI grant. We're just going to, open every can we can and see.
Right.
I wish I could tell you what, I have no idea what the answer to that is.
So we're going to try to mitigate the cost as much as possible.
Yes.
So that, if there is a final cost that we have to pay for, that would be paid for by the ratepayers, East Point and St. Clair Shores. And we're trying
Right.
to mitigate that. That's
Yes.
our goal is to clean it up and make it work right, but at the same time, get as much grant money, Commissioner Ronald, as possible, because he likes grant money. So, okay, so with that,
So do we.
I'll open up the speakers here. Commissioner Romano, you are first to speak.
Thank you. If we would like to get, and I'm sure we'd like to get public participation, resident participation on this, and honestly, Candace, I think just that video of the fat burger and the drone showing that discharge, I'll tell you what, it impressed me, and I don't know about the rest of the commissioners. You see that kind of junk being put into Lake St. Clair, and I'm a fisherman, and I love to fish, and I love the boat, and I see that kind of junk being put in Lake St. Clair, I got to say, whoa, wait a minute. And I think maybe just that video, when you go looking for money, to be shown in just short spurts of what it looks like, the fact that you're coming up with the with retention basins and these gates, so to speak, great idea that water going up instead of going across, it goes up and you can hold it there. I mean, you've got some, I don't know how to say this without trying to sound nasty, but if we could shorten your presentation, and I'm not saying here and now, to the point of showing the fat burger, showing the drones, showing the gates going up and down, and the water retention being on this green belt or green area, so to speak. I think, honestly, for me personally, it's turned my head tremendously, but I've always been in favor of cleaning up the Lake St. Clair, but I think that's something that you ought to keep in mind local presentations to local municipalities, to let them know what you're doing there. I think it'll shake up a lot of people, because how many people want to use Lake St. Clair? How many people want to go to the beach? And how many times have we seen personally Can't go to the beach, been closed. There's been discharge. You can't, there's vehicle. How many times we've seen that? And just to show the people, listen, this is something that can happen. We can do this and do it in our lifetime. I think that's a presentation that everybody would welcome. My opinion.
I
Thank
appreciate
you.
that. That video is shocking.
Oh.
It's gross. It's shocking. And that just happened, and it's happening all the time. So
But
we
that's
are showing.
needed to be seen. People need
Yeah.
to see
Yeah.
the severity of that has been going on year after year. Or how many discharges we have a year? 8, I believe you said, so.
Depends, right? Some years 11.
Some years it's more, some
7,
years it's
the
less.
average,
And
yeah.
then with this investment, that's going to cut it down to what, 3? It's not going
Yeah.
to make it perfect. Nothing's perfect. like
Well, and
that,
there's, there's, after that, we'll figure out, how do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a
Right,
time. You
right.
got to start here.
But
We
you
got to
have
have a
to
plan.
start somewhere. We should have
Yeah.
started 20 years ago or even longer. I don't know.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Mao. Commissioner Carabelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Commissioner. No, that's exciting stuff, and you're trying to address a problem. And like you mentioned, we have an elephant we're trying to deal with as far as the jail right now, which is my plate priority 1. But with that said, you mentioned a lot of things that I was writing down, and you talked about the Army Corps and the Great Lakes. There's one that you didn't mention, though, and I would strongly suggest, if you guys haven't already, is get with JP. SEMCOG, they have a few special funds, and there's tens of millions of dollars in those funds, and sometimes they come up at the last minute where projects don't go through and they have to be spent. And if you got a shovel-ready project and you have plans already, this sounds like something they would be very excited to work with you on. And I strongly encourage you to get with him. And I know the guy who sits on the board over there on that committee that gives away the money.
I really appreciate that, you know what? You're right. We should be looking at SEMCOG as well. It's good advice.
That'd be the first one, because that's a great opportunity. Then I'm looking at it, you mentioned possible park, possible thing, well, the DNR Trust, they have some opportunities for the grants there as well. So the combination of everything you're doing, I'm pretty excited about your opportunity to get money from SEMCOG and be able to leverage that with the DNR Trust Fund. That might be, a home run for you. So, and I'd be happy to work with you and JP on that. If somebody just wants to reach out, I'd be happy to help.
I appreciate that. The other thing we're doing, I sit on the Great Lakes Commission. So we have the Great Lakes Commission coming shortly. I don't know when. Next week? Couple weeks? I don't know. They're coming. Anyway, they're going to bring in the EPA and NOAA, and they're bringing everybody, the full Monty, all these folks, and they're all going to see the video. And last week we showed it to Andy Levin. That's the first thing he said. Oh my God, right? So you're absolutely right. Yeah, when people see it, it's shocking. Yeah, that's what we're doing. We do it all the time. So maybe we should stop doing it.
Okay. The last question I have for you, you guys did the break 50 Mile Road. You started that in the very beginning. The investigation determined this is how that happened, and I don't know what your cost was on that. Is your office looking at possibly other similar conditions that could be happening in some of our other pipes that?
Well, we don't have anything like that, of course. It's such an unusual thing. But
Okay.
one of the things that we did do, we got a SAW grant, and we inspected the rest of the mid, which is another 17 miles of interceptor. And no surprise, there's a lot of work to be done. Hopefully nothing on the level of that kind of a thing, but there's a lot of work and maintenance that has to be done. So this is one of the things that we're trying to do, is in a comprehensive evaluation, is look at everything that we have and try to make a priority plan for projects and maintenance and how we're going to pay for it, cost it out, and put it into a program over a number of years. You can't do it all at once. Can't break the bank, but it has to happen. Otherwise, you're going to end up with another sinkhole. I mean, look, we've got aging infrastructure everywhere. And as I say, I think people are sort of overwhelmed by some of this stuff. And so you think, oh, gosh, I'm going to worry about my police and fire because they're right here. I mean, that's just, we're all human. That's what happens. But this thing has to be addressed. And, when we have all these huge infrastructure debates, fixing the damn roads or whatever we're going to do, which we need to do, but we don't think about the underground, right? Because you flush your toilet, it goes away, hopefully, but not all the time. Anyway.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown?
Thank you, Madam Commissioner. The discharges come out of that particular pipe. There's others like it that have been documented. But the ones that come out of that particular, any of that stuff come from Oakland County?
No,
None of
that's
it's all-
about
it's all over.
85% Roseville, and then a bit of St. Clair Shores.
Okay,
There's no Oakland County in there.
all right, okay. What about the 15-mile road the repair after the road was repaired, which recently had another sinkhole type exposure? Can you explain a little bit about that? I've got some people who happen to live out there that live out, people asked me the question about why did that happen? Did I miss?
Well, there were two different things over the winter. One happened by 15 Mile and Harper. That was actually just a water main break that Clinton Township had. I think anytime anything happens on 15 Mile, everyone just totally freaks out, right?
Yeah.
When I first said, they went, oh my gosh, this is happening on 15 Mile. I went, oh no, please. But actually, it was just a normal water main break by Clinton Township. And then there was another water issue right by 15 in Hayes. And that, we've got a temporary fix, but we'll make a more permanent fix in the spring. I say we, it's really Fraser. There was a fire hydrant that was there. I don't know if I'm explaining it right, but the line was stopped, and then they didn't hook it back up or something, and then they turned the water on for some reason, and anyway.
the road
But it had
underneath.
nothing to do with the sewer interceptor.
Okay.
So you can tell the folks.
It
there's-
wasn't part of the work
Don't
that
worry
was
about
done
it.
over the top of it in an inappropriate way or anything like that?
No, it all had to do with this fire hydrant, so.
Very good.
Well, now we're just trying to figure out, Fraser's trying to get their insurance to pay for it, and they might need it, I don't know, that's a whole other thing, but it's nothing to do with the interceptor. But it was right there, so believe me, I understand everybody, it's snake bit by this thing.
Well, you keep going. We got your back on that, and we'll do as much as we possibly can. Thank you, to support you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Don. Commissioner Dujay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome.
Thank you.
Couple of things. First of all, I'd like to see whatever we can do with the Red Run drain, because that goes into the Clinton River. You live on the Clinton River. I keep my boat on the Clinton River. I'd like to see clean Clinton River. But let's go back to Chapton. How big is the tank at Chapton now?
28 million.
How long does it take those two pumps to fill it?
To fill it?
Yeah, 28 million.
We can fill it in 30 minutes.
They rebuilt those pumps about 10 years ago, and I remember going down to St. Louis when they were rebuilding those things. They're variable vane, they're same speed. It's actually, for 68, it's tremendous technology. Are you thinking that those two pumps are enough to fill what you're proposing? Or are you
Well,
going to have to add
there's three pumps, right?
Yeah, there's 3 pumps.
Okay.
Yes. Where we're proposing this is actually on the downstream side.
Right.
So anything extra has already been treated, everything's already done by that point. So yes, we can fill all that. No problem. We're not gonna have any capacity issues.
So the pump infrastructure is sufficient?
Correct.
All right. Because that concerns me more than anything else. The gates, are you having problems with the gates? Because there was some question as to some of the screws or bolts that handle or pick them up or set them down.
Not that I'm aware of.
So infrastructure is solid there?
Yes.
Okay. Chapton it really is pretty amazing if you think about it. That makes me feel a lot better that we don't have to add money as far as pumps and the like go. Last question, the towers. My understanding is they're going over a couple of inches a year. Is that true?
I don't know, I'm not following.
The
But-
9-mile towers,
Oh, that they're falling over?
that they're going over, my
A
understanding.
leaning tower of 9
Yeah,
miles?
somebody, just, I forget who was
Just the way you're
talking about
looking
it.
at it, I think.
Could be. I wouldn't be
No.
surprised.
No, I've never heard that.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know. Those things are down on bedrock, obviously, right?
I hope.
The foundation. Yeah,
I wasn't there when they dug them.
yeah. You know, one thing about the pumps, we also have, we're life cycling the pumps. So we have, within our budget every year now, we're putting X amount of dollars into a fund for the pumps. So when those
Good.
pumps have to be redone, we don't have to go, oh my God, now I need $3 million or whatever,
Yeah.
10 million, whatever. We're putting money in, we're life cycling it, so we're saving, we have a fund for that. In regards to the Red Run Drain,
Right.
two bad things happen in the Red Run Drain. The George W. Kuhn, that's
Yes.
the 12 towns, right?
Right.
And the city of Warren.
Yeah.
Dumps right into the Red Run Drain. And some of theirs is not combined sewer, it's raw sewage. Just telling you, that does happen. So
Okay.
it's happening. I don't want to point fingers at anyone, but it's well documented.
I still
You know,
remember,
and-
remember when water was going over Ryan Road into Red Run Drain.
Yeah. So
And there was
that-
nothing anybody could do about it.
You know, the city of Warren has passed a bonding resolution for $52 million.
Right.
And they have purchased an old elementary school, which they're going to tear down. I think they already tore it down. They're going to build a 12 million gallon retention pond there.
Right.
But they need about 30 million gallons. So where are we going here, you know?
We'll
Just
see how
saying.
it goes.
Yeah, we'll see how it
We'll
goes.
see how it goes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next
But
on
I
the
don't,
list,
I don't represent, I mean, I don't take care of Warren. I just have my Chapaton and Martin, so I'm focused on that.
Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple comments and then a question here. First of all, I want to thank you for transparency and disclosure. You know, a lot of politicians wouldn't want to show that discharge going out into the lake. So I appreciate the fact that you have the courage and you're willing to go ahead and say, look, this is what we're doing. Even under my watch, this is what we're doing, and we want to solve that problem. So I want to commend you for that. I think you had the same issue with the fat burger. Some people might have said, you know, do you really have to say anything? You said,
Yeah.
no, let's show everybody what's going on, and that way they're educated. So I think, like you say, we don't think about it because we see the roads. We don't really know, and really, I didn't know too much until I got on those drain boards about exactly what goes on underneath there. So, thank you very much. I'm glad you're at the helm. I think it's an important thing. So now the question: between the two projects, the extending the canal and then the pipes on the forward end. One is $20 million. Is that correct? That would be the extending the canal, and the other one is about $10 million.
Yes.
Is that right? Is Wade and Trim doing the work on both?
No, the other one, I think we're about 90% done of the RFPs for the gates.
Okay.
And then we're going to bid that out.
Okay.
So-
And is there a preference on what we should do first? Do we want to do the gates first and then the canal, or whatever we get the money for, I guess is my question.
Well, we're moving on this canal thing. We're moving right along.
Okay.
But I think we can walk and spit at the same time. We're going to see
Okay.
how we do here. We're moving.
Well, I
okay?
like that. I do like
don't
that.
know. You know, I'm moving along here. I don't know how long I'm going to be here.
Well,
I
and
get this thing done.
And I agree with you. I love to walk and chew bubble gum at the same time, I guess. But, you know, you're talking about splitting the elephant. You know what I
Try
mean?
to punch above our weight over here, you know?
Yeah, no, and I get that. And again, we know, we're all cognizant of the fact that there's limited fund. You know what I mean? We're trying to get as much as we can. But, you know, I guess if we were to be able to help you in some way, is there a preference between, you know, which one you can do first? You know, the gates on the front end or the canal on the back end? I see a lot of the benefits on the back end because, as Vince said, that water's already treated and it's pushed out, where if we're holding water back, you know, we've got to deal with it then coming in and treating it. So I guess in
Well,
terms...
really, we don't have to treat it. Actually, our plan is we hold it back, then once the wet weather event is over, we can just release it slowly, and it'll go on its way down to
Right, that's right.
Detroit.
Okay.
So we actually then will save the cost of treating it
Well,
at
that's-
Chapaton, which is a added benefit.
That's an added benefit. So I guess maybe my question is to you this, and I love the fact that you're going to walk and I'll say chew bubble gum at the same time, is what are your plans to do first?
I don't
Are-
chew bubble gum, I spit.
Are your plans to do the gates first or your plans to do the canal first? In some ways, now that you've mentioned the fact that we don't have to treat that water, it almost seems a little bit more feasible to do the gates first. I'm just asking.
Well, we sort of laid out our plan here, so we're moving along with this Chapaton thing. We're getting the design done now, and we would hope that we would actually start construction within a year. I don't know, you have any comment about the?
Canals first. Canals is easier. The in-system gates are gonna be much more complicated. There is gonna be a disruption to the community, because we're gonna have to put shafts in to get down to the pipe, which is about 50 feet deep. So the canal is a great option for many reasons, so.
And I would imagine too, with it looking like it's a wetland and all that kind of stuff, do you when you're looking for grant money and you're looking for funding, does that also include those gates, or is it something that we can do all together and say, look, this is our overall plan, we've got this like extension and wetland, and then we've also got these gates? Is the funding all for one
Yes.
source? Okay, that's
Yeah,
what I wanted to know.
although, you've got different funders that look for different criteria.
Right.
So we think we're just hitting it on all cylinders here. That's why I said we're going to bring in the Great Lakes Commission is going to bring in a whole team of the NOAA people, the EPA. I said, don't bring one, bring 100 in. Bring them all here, okay? They all got pots of cash. We're looking forward. We want to show them all these things, how great this is.
And get as much as you can.
And the truth is, on the Great Lakes, other people I don't know of anything like this anywhere else that's happening. Of course, everyone doesn't overflow either. Grand Rapids was a bad actor for years. They bucked up. They assessed themselves. They fixed most of the, Port Huron has fixed most of their issues. But there's the city of Detroit. That one video, I could have showed you 50 spots in the Detroit River in a heavy rain where that stuff is going like that. I mean, but who's paying?
Yeah.
Nobody down there wants to talk about it much.
Right.
So that's why I think if we could get this going, then we can look at Oakland County, and then, everybody's downstream of somebody, right?
That's right.
And we're downstream of Oakland, but we're not downstream of Wayne, so I'm less worried about them.
Right. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. Commissioner Kleinfeld?
Well, I just wanted to clarify something, because when Chair Myjack said, after she's seen that, where she could get the funding, then, East Point and Roseville and St. Clair Shores, because we're also, the Martin would eventually be involved, that the ratepayers would pick it up. I think the reason that she's here is she wants us to consider broader county involvement. So I just wanted to clear that up. She's not just talking about getting the funding elsewhere and then those communities are on the hook. She doesn't have a dollar amount, so that's what we'll all be waiting for in the future, because she's got a lot of people to try to tap into, I think. And then my question is, that boat ramp, is St. Clair Shores and East Point, do they charge for the use of that?
Yeah, but it's very minimal, $2 or something. I mean, it's hardly anything.
Okay.
So, but they have a person there that takes the money and lets people in and out. And it's a busy boat launch, but we'll see what we can do with the boat launch. I'm in the sewer business. I'm trying to fix these
No, I know,
things,
and I
but
was
yeah.
thinking if there was any money that's
Yeah.
made there, why is East Point and St. Clair Shores having it if it's our property? So, all right, thank you.
No, but and I appreciate you clarifying that I was looking for county involvement. I'm here for cash, okay? I want to make sure you understand. I want you to all think about it. I want you to all think about it seriously, because I don't want to put a number out here, but we need money. Okay?
Okay, Chairman Smith?
Joe, did you understand what I'm saying?
Thank you. Candace, thanks for coming.
Okay, thank you.
No, I mean, I'm talking,
I'm
so
sorry.
thank you for coming, welcome.
You-
Yeah, No,
As soon as I said I wanted money, I said, thanks for coming,
Yeah,
goodbye.
thanks for coming. You always get the most questions and comments of all of our speakers, so that's always good. I'd like to ask Commissioner Romano and Commissioner Leonetti to stop ruining my favorite meal, hamburgers. It's a fat burg, not a fat burger, all right? It's a fat burg. There.
Hey, one thing about the Fatberg, Wayne State actually got a grant. How much is it? $85,000 grant. And they're going to have their people study our Fatberg, and they are going to put an exhibit at the Detroit Science Center, starting in June, of our Fatberg.
Listen, you
Excuse me,
cannot.
but-
Yeah, no.
It's
pardon.
always a teachable moment, I'm like, sure.
You cannot do enough to inform the public about flushing those wipes down the toilet.
Right,
It drives
right.
me nuts. I have a septic system, and I still have problems with my kids, and I want to beat them every day that somehow they find them, and I have to call a plumber, right? I mean, and luckily it's a septic system, so it doesn't go to yours, but it's something that cannot get beat into these young kids' heads
Yes,
enough.
you're right.
Number one. So let me ask you, on the all the new retention possibilities out there, you said it's downstream, but let's just say it fills up and it stops, right, just before. Does it also back up for the most part? Is it almost kind of where most of it goes back in, obviously, if you open the gates back towards the Detroit section and it heads back down to where it's supposed to?
Yeah, we're looking at two options for that. One is to gravity drain it back,
Mm-hmm.
and the other is to dig it deeper out there and actually pump it back.
Okay,
If we go deeper, we can get more storage.
sure. And then, so that's obviously, though, treated once it gets out in there, just in case it has to go out.
Correct.
And that doesn't kill the vegetation or anything like that?
It'll be designed to where the vegetation can handle it.
Okay, and then that area in Chappaton, is it all connected through the Martin? Because the Martin is the one that we saw the over.
No,
So that doesn't help that discharge one bit?
not yet.
Okay.
But we're looking at ways to
Looking at some way to
connect
connect them so that they could actually
Yes.
keep some of the.
Yes.
All right.
But
So-
right now, they're independent systems.
So this system where it is right now basically just flows right out to where it opens and out kind of out into that area. It doesn't even go way out like that other, okay. Ooh, all right. That's it. Oh, so let me ask this too. The percentage would even probably, so let's say it cuts it down by 70%. But then even if you get to a certain area of full, you're still not, you don't have to dump every bit of that, right? You just have to kind of dump what keeps it full, and then if we're done, and then it can backflow. So you're actually even saving on, you might not discharge 70% of the time, and then some of the discharges would be considerably less beyond that, correct? Okay.
Yes.
All right,
Yeah, it's going to be an enormous, it'll be transformational,
great.
really. I
You
think.
explained the idea when we were out there, and it
Yeah.
made perfect sense, and I'm glad to see you guys moving forward on it. I guess the last question is, though, when you say, you're moving forward with it, we're hoping to get grants, but if you're moving forward with it and we don't have any secure source of money, what are our, the sheriff was in here last week, and he talked about needing $370 million for the jail, but he really didn't say, I'm asking you to do this, and quite honestly, that's what we're waiting for. Ask us to do something so that we can decide what to do. And at some point, when you start realizing what's coming in and what's not coming in so far, will you be back to us to say, we would like you to
Well,
put a millage, or we would like to raise the rates?
Since you all keep
or-
asking me about the money,
Well, that's
let
a
me
big
ask you for
concern of
$3 million.
ours.
I'm going to start right there, okay?
What's that?
Because we got $3 million from the state, and certainly if we got $3 million from the state, we should be able to get $3 million from the county somehow. So I'll ask you that.
Great, well, then we'll talk with
Okay.
our finance director and find out where we can trim the budget to
You
do
know,
something
that's
like
really
that.
10% of the project.
IT,
Huh?
roads, oh, sorry, Brian.
Yeah. You know, really, I mean, I don't expect the county to fund the whole thing, but if you could, some level of participation is appropriate. The state gave us 10%, certainly our own county should give us 10%, it seems to me.
And not to put the whole burden on the two communities that it affects most,
Yes.
but I mean, I imagine some of it would have to be an ask from their communities to a certain extent,
Well, their
correct?
ratepayers are going to pick up whatever's left,
Okay, that's what I,
whatever's left. You know? So I'm just trying to, because I've had them say, well, how much is it going to be per, per household, or how, you do it on their sewer bills? And I'd say, well, can't really give you a number yet, because
right.
the last time you asked me, I know since then I got $3 million. Now maybe I'm going to get some more, and maybe, I don't know yet. I'll have a better idea.
Thank you.
But right now, I'm in the money
Sure.
business, looking for money.
All right, thank you.
So, yeah, I hope you would consider that. I think that, really, I say that with a straight face. I think that's a very appropriate number. And I know you got to do the jail and all of that, but, I don't know how you'll finance all of that, but I'm
not
not
coming
looking for
from the
anything
general
like
fund,
that.
sure.
And this is something that is huge quality of life that can change things generationally.
Agree. Thank you.
Commissioner Drollet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner, for your presentation. Just a clarification, when you state that these two projects could reduce overflows by 70%, do you mean from those two communities, or do you mean throughout all the overflows in the county?
Well, just those two communities.
Okay.
Just those two communities. Now, as I laid out, we don't have it, like in Macomb Township, we don't overflow. In Harrison Town, we don't overflow because we're in the mid. Does not overflow. We don't have combined sewer overflows coming from here that goes down to Detroit. So in Macomb, the only areas where we have combined sewer overflows Chapaton is our principal one, and then the Martin retention, which I showed you that video. That's the only areas I'm looking at. Clinton Township is taking care of their own issues, and then that leaves Warren, really.
So it brings up another philosophical question. If Clinton Township was expected to pay for their own fix, and if other communities have engaged in paying for their own fix, whether it's Mount Clemens or others, what do we, how do we tell those people that had to pay for it all that we're going to come and bail out St. Clair Shores and East Point and help take the burden off them and pay for their part of their fix for them? I mean, is that just a...
I think that's something that you need to consider. I personally think that it's very easy to discuss that because, as I say, we all use the lake, right? And many of these things should have been addressed years ago, and they haven't because we just didn't have the political will to do it. And I think now you got to tell people we got to have the political will to help a bit with something like this. This is a county. Lake St. Clair is more than Clinton Township. So I personally think that's an easy sell to any of you folks. Show them the video.
Yeah. I wonder what that 70% represents, that reduction in total reduction of potential combined sewage overflows if you include Warren's and Martin and so forth. Do you have any idea what that number might be?
Well, I could go back and get it, I guess, but I mean, and what about, who else would you include? Oakland County,
from
whoever.
County overall.
Oh,
if we did these two projects, what would be the net reduction in, discharge into the lake overall?
I don't have that number, but I know it will be in the 70 percentile for our largest discharger.
Yeah, so maybe it could be 30% overall, it could be 40, it could be 50, it could be 25, but it's going to be a big number probably.
What do you think, Mr. Finance Guy?
I think it's going to be the vast majority. If Warren's pretty much taking care of theirs and Clinton Township has theirs, the only actors then are Chapaton and Martin. And it's 70%, and Chapaton is 3 times the size of Martin. So this is the bulk of it right here.
Yeah. So you know what I really like about these two proposals is it's not a drop in the bucket. When we talk about appropriating $27 million for roads, we're told that it's going to pave 4 miles or something. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard to sell citizens that, hey, we want to raise your millage and we're going to fix 5 miles extra of roads this year or something along those lines, that when you're proposing something like this, it can make a very substantial impact.
Yes.
With an actual project. And it doesn't mean it's going to take $27 million a year every year for the next 30 years.
That's right.
Or something along those lines. I guess it just makes me reflect on, if I just asked my constituents in a poll, would you rather pay $27 million a year to reduce dumping into the lake, a one-time cost, to reduce dumping into the lake by 50% or more, or but that means you have to wait to build a jail an extra year or two? I'm pretty confident the constituents I have are saying, let's just go with the old jail and kind of patch it up and stop 50% of the dumping in the lake with one fell swoop, a permanent, not permanent solution, but a long-term solution.
Yes.
So I think what you've proposed is shockingly cost-effective, a one-time cost and not an ongoing, never-ending nightmare that can actually make an impact in a short-term basis. And I hope that we can find a way to get this done.
I really appreciate that. We are really doing, I think, a lot of value engineering there. We first went out, we said, well, okay, let's just separate the sewers. How much is that? $340 million? I just said, you got to be kidding. You know what the assessed valuation of those houses in East Point? Seriously. It can't happen. Right. So what else can we do? We went back to the drawing board. Now we've come up with this. In the case of Martin, I'm not up here to give you all this yet, but we're already doing value engineering. I said, we were thinking about putting a new pipe down Frasio. You got to have an outlet, right? And then talking to Kip Walby and Taylor in Roseville, we said, every year in your utilities budget, maybe you could start separating a couple streets a year and feed into the pipe. Well, the pipe's going to be $111 million. So that's not happening, okay? We got to figure out another plan. And I'll be back here with another plan because we are going to figure this out somehow, that we can do it.
Well, it is certainly psychologically at least, a bang for the buck. It's not the $400 million we need for the jail. It's not the billions of dollars we need to fix the roads across the state or something like that. It's a doable amount of money.
It is.
For a significant return.
a huge, not just for us, generationally, really,
Yeah.
generationally.
Okay. Well, thank you. I really appreciate the work you've put in, your staff has put into this proposal. Thank you.
Thanks, Leon. Got two speakers left. Hang in there, Brian.
Sorry, Brian.
Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Chairman. Candace, you know we're very supportive of the entire initiative, but I got to touch on something. We just went from, this is a global initiative to a countywide initiative to ratepayers in Roseville, East Point, and St. Clair Shores to bailing them out. I don't want anybody leaving this room, and we talked about it this morning at the drain board. This has to be, just like we told Tony with the jail, a cell program. It has to be immediate. We talked about the video on there. That video, if you go on Facebook or YouTube, has already had 2 million views. The other one with the drone flying over had over 3 million views. So it's not a case of the need, the desire, and the want is here. We're all supportive of that. It's prioritizing the funding. I can't sit here and say this is more important than the jail or this is more important than roads, because right now they're all priority ones. But I can say when we start using terms like ratepayers, there's mayors and councils that you've referred to that are getting notification of this. I talked to our city manager in Roseville already, and we already had a discussion about getting on local cable networks and advising them and trying to build up the momentum in order to get ratepayers to understand it. For those of you that have not, and I don't think there's anybody, talk to your constituents about the sewage charge that just got added to their phone bills. Try that conversation sometime. And that was like $23. It wasn't a monumental hit, but people are noticing, and rightly so. So I'm not the doom and gloom here, you know that. I chaired SEMSD. I told Phil I've been down there where those turbines are. If you've never done that, that's an experience. It all has to be done. It's how we do it. And Commissioner Gillette, you were the first one to say, how come we're spending money until we know where the money's coming from? And I agreed with that. I didn't vote with you, but I agreed with it. And it's the same thing here. All the initiatives keep opening the cans because going to the ratepayers, as you well know and your team knows, I think that's the last option. So
Well, I'm certain the ratepayers are going to have some hit. They are going to pay something. So I'm not trying to sugarcoat this.
No.
I'm just trying to make it so that they don't have,
I'm not asking for that, Candace.
Yeah.
All I'm asking for is what we discussed
Right.
today is the awareness program.
Right.
Here it comes, because we explained twice at a city council meeting those sewer fees getting added to their water bills. My God, you would think we were from Mars or something.
Yeah.
Nobody knew it was coming. So that's all I'm saying is there's a lot of, and you're moving at a very aggressive, to your credit, schedule to make that happen. We just have to make sure people are aware it's coming. That's all I'm saying.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr.
You're
Chair.
absolutely right.
Last speaker, Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One other thing I didn't commend you on is using the existing structures that you have. You know, you didn't come in here and say, look, we're going to tear it all down and rebuild it. I won't mention any names, but, you know, you use the existing structures that you have.
He's looking at you.
Well, we know who we're talking about, but I'm saying you're using the existing structures that you have, and that goes a long way because, you know, obviously it's doing the best we can with the resources that we have. I do have a question for the chair. Mr. Majek, I mean, there was a request here, there was a presentation. I think she subtly said she's here for money. What do we do next? Do we send this to Steve Schmiegel in Finance to take a look at what can be done?
I talked to Candace, I don't know, a month ago. We would have to talk, if we wanted to go that route, the board as a whole, we have to get Executive Hackle on board, certainly in Finance, and see where we are from a budget standpoint. You know, there's a lot of needs. You know, there's always a struggle for tax dollars. You got the county jail thing, E91 proposal, so on and so forth. And it's about prioritizing the needs, you know, but I think her coming here today is just a start, you know. Let's get the ball rolling and see where we're going, and
I'll leave that up to you. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
now it's in your court,
Yeah.
right?
No, and that's exactly it.
So
And, you know,
you guys gotta,
well, they're
No?
shaking their heads.
Point of information.
Go ahead, point of information.
no, you tell me the process, and I don't know. I will
I think I
follow
heard you
whatever
say, I think I
process you
heard you say
ask.
3 million, right?
Yeah.
Point of information by Kirabelli.
Thank you. It was mentioned that this would come up during a budget process, and when we're going out, starting out a fiscal year, you're going into the next fiscal year, asking for money during a budget process. Right now, the budget's already been approved. Now, if there happens to be hypothetically a $3 million savings that was found somewhere in the county and that money was freed and available to do something, then that's something that can be talked about. But we would be dipping into the rainy day fund, which is right at the limit, in my opinion, where it needs to be. So with that said, I think it's admirable for you to ask for it, and I don't begrudge you for doing that, but the reality in my book is that, you know, this has to go through finance, and for them to come up with you to tell us where this needs to go, to make the ask. But with that said, you mentioned out a process of a lot of opportunities for grants, and I understand, you know, you're trying to build up your kitty. The reality comes, some of those grants may have to have match, and some of the grants you got can't be used for match. So personally, I think if you could get some SEMCOG dollars, there's no match with that, and that could possibly be used to match for your other money.
That's a good point.
So it's early in the process for us to
Okay.
say, let's give you X amount of dollars, though I strongly suggest talking to finance to see where they're at and ask them if there's a savings that's, you know, realized during this year, can, you know, we have first dibs on it.
I will do that. You know, I know Jaco was here just before I got up. You know, last year, whenever I was telling you we needed $2 million to do all of our digitizing, et cetera, we are now down to, how much is it? About $175,000 we're going to get a $2 million project done for. Just saying, okay? So we
Madam
are
Chair?
really saving, I think.
That's a great
It's just
point.
one area, only one thing.
But it realized that it was reduced, if I'm not mistaken, at budget time, down to about $800,000.
And
So-
then we reduced it again, and now,
And then the
since
budget-
we've reduced it, we just recently, I told Karen, I said, you're at 175 grand, why don't we make them pay? I'm kidding, but we keep getting it down, keep getting it down.
Well,
But
and that
wait,
money's
this was a
budgeted. It's
point of
what-
order, and Leonetti has the floor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. What I'd like to do, I mean, what I'd like to do is I'd like to, you know, I'd like to give the commissioner a chance so that she's come here, she's showed us her plans. She would like to try to address the issue of money. And I think what we should do is look at sending it to finance, but also, look, we do a lot of capital improvements, okay? We do capital improvements around this campus all the time. What's to say this isn't a capital improvement?
Right,
I mean, it is a
right.
capital improvement as far
Absolutely.
as
It
I'm
is.
concerned. And so that should come out of a capital improvement fund. And it would really be then up to the executive to bump your capital improvement ahead of some of the other ones we have. But I think we should definitely take the next step and get it in front of finance and put it in the capital improvement fund so that we can get this going. And I understand what you're saying, Commissioner Drollet, about, you know, why should Clinton Township pay twice and stuff like this. But at the end of the day, when you look at that logo right there, what do you see? You see a sailboat, you see the lake right there. You know what I mean? The lake is part of everybody for Macomb County.
Now, I'm not the chairman, but if I was, I'd say I accept that in the form of a motion.
You want to speak? You do? You sure?
A lawyer couldn't have said it better.
All right. Last speaker, Chair Smith.
I just want to address this. We don't make motions for, like, IT to get money. Like, they come to us, say, we really need money, and we say, well, we'll make the motion. You come to us and you ask for it but you have to run through the process with finance and find the money. We always say, find the money, right? So and now, that doesn't mean at the end of the year in budget time, we can't, and we have the authority to, we amend the budget, right? But we can amend the budget, but it doesn't mean the executive has to use that money, right? So, I mean, there is a process, and we know that you'll be coming and asking, but the process is to start with, like we said, the executive's office, Steve Smeagol, and say, listen, this is what I'm going to be asking for in my budget, or
Okay.
early on, and that's how it starts. And, I mean, you know that, generally speaking, we're behind you, but we make everybody tell us where this money is coming from, right? And we will I'm sure that we can, Steve always comes up with money at the end of the year that he didn't expect, but yeah.
Huh?
And
Okay.
it's just like the sheriff with the jail.
Take a note from Leonetti, would you? Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. It's just like the jail. He doesn't, we don't just say, okay, well, let's figure out where we're going to get the money. The request has to be made. We need a millage, we need a bond proposal, and then we actually ask, we approve or don't approve that. So,
Okay.
just so you know, I know Rob's gung-ho because he's on the water all the time, and we all are too. We love, I don't think there's a person here that doesn't love what you guys are doing and wouldn't support it with all we have, but the procedure is
Okay.
that.
I appreciate that. We are going to go through the procedure.
Thanks.
Very good, very good. That's the end of the speakers. Candace, thank you.
All right, thank you.
For coming here.
Okay.
We look forward to
Hearing from you again and working with you on this project. I need a motion to receive and file, moved by Carabelli, supported by Drollet. Please vote. Okay, motion passes. Let's see here. We're going to department recommendations. Need a motion for,
I think we're next with the
You are next,
engineer.
you are
And it's going
next.
to be very, very brief, but I'm going to let Brian.
Go ahead.
Just tell you what we're doing.
go ahead.
Very brief.
Can I get a motion for this, Commissioners? The budget amendment, Public Works personnel adjustments, moved by Kleinfeld, supported by Kraft. Brian?
Yeah, so as Candace set up, we have a whole slew of wastewater projects that are upcoming and current, and instead of adding a new position, we found a unique way in order to eliminate one position and get a small increase in funding for another position. So we're looking for an engineer. What we've been able to do is increase our operations in Chapleton specifically. We've contracted out some mowing, which is much more efficient. And with our SCADA system and our measuring devices, automating that, we no longer need a pump station operator at Chapleton. And with all the projects that we've got going, we've identified about 200 million. Not only the 30 million project we talked about just recently, but also the mid project plan, as well as the OMID. We've got $70 million of OMID projects that we're working on as well. So what we're trying to do is redirect some money and hire an engineer instead. And this would all be paid from the wastewater district, so there would be no general fund impact on this budget amendment. So we're asking for $2,585. It's about 0.1% of Kansas's $3 million. But certainly less expensive and much less expensive than hiring an outside engineering firm to help us with all these projects as well. So we'd like to get someone on board as soon as possible. That's one reason we're asking for the budget amendment now as opposed to waiting for next year's budget. So we appreciate your consideration.
Very good. Commissioner Carabelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real quick, did this go through the county HR department, or do you guys have?
It did. It went through county HR, county finance, and through the executive's
So the
office.
process, okay, so they blessed. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That's all I had.
Seeing no other speakers, please vote. Motion passes. Thank you again, Candace, and your staff for coming here today. Next is Brian. Brian, thank you very much for your patience. We really appreciate it. We'll go on to 7B, a cost-sharing agreement, Sterling Heights, $249,075, joint repairs on Mound Road from 14 to 14 and a half mile. Can I please get a motion for this? Moved by Romano, supported by Lucido. Brian.
Good afternoon, good evening, Commissioners.
Good night.
Yes, seeking approval for a cost share agreement with Sterling Heights for the repair of section of the mound between 14 and 14 and a half. Obviously, we have the upcoming Mound Road Innovate Mound project, but we are consistently maintaining that and expending dollars and cents on coal patch and fixes that aren't really appropriate for a longer duration of a year, 2 year, 3 years. So this is going to get us by for minimal repair, and it is a cost share agreement with Sterling Heights paying half.
Very good. Seeing no speakers, please vote. Motion passes. We'll go into Item 7C, can I get a motion for this also? Moved by Romano, supported by Lucido. Cost sharing between Sterling Heights and Warren, Innovate Mound Phase 1, $200,000. Brian.
Yes, once again, a cost share agreement, as was asked at the last public services meeting with the contract that we had with HNTB for the first phase of the Innovate Mound project to basically secure the funding through getting the term sheet completed and getting the tip and stip situated with SEMCOG and the state. This is a cost share agreement between Warren and Sterling Heights for the percentages shown. Department of Roads at 50%, Sterling Heights at 33.3%, and Warren at 16.67%. So seeking approval for this cost share agreement.
Just the opposite, Brian. Sterling Heights is coming up with 66,000, Warren's 33. I think
The percentages are 33.33% for Sterling Heights, and then Warren is 16.67%.
Thank you. Seeing no speakers, please vote, Commissioners. Motion passes. We'll go on to item D, contract with MDOT in installation of rumble strips in northern Macomb County, $364,400. Brian.
Yes, correct. This is a typical MDOT contract. We had received safety funds for installation of rumble strips, but they're considered mumble strips. They're not the type of strips you see on the expressway. They're more of a sinusoidal, more of a wavy type application, so they don't get as loud for nearby residents, so it's not more of a disruption for residential areas. But it is proven that it obviously assists for traffic. When somebody would travel across the center line, it does give them notification of crossing the center line. So it is receiving safety funds for this. I think if you look at the breakdown, out of the $364,400, the balance of our share is only $58,400. So seeking approval for the MDOT contract.
Okay, can we get a motion for this first? Moved by Brown, supported by Kraft. On the list, I have Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two things real quick. Where in northern Macomb County? What roads? Yeah, is it Ray? Is it Shelby? Is it Lennox Township?
We have the segments are on sections of Capac Road, Romeo Plank. We have sections on 32 Mile Road, 26 Mile Road, 29 Mile Road, sections of North Avenue, and New Haven Road.
Thank you, Brian. Also, one other thing, I appreciate you and your department filling out these forms this way. I know they're the newer forms and might be a bigger bit of a pain, but it's a little more clear for us. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Brown. Pass. Okay, seeing no other speakers, please vote. Motion passes. Go on to item 7E, contract amendment, ITS Network Architecture V Land Design, $102,000. Brian.
Yes, this is a request to seek approval for contract modification. We had a previous contract that we had issued to WSP to perform services, and this was started, I believe, back in 2016. That contract has been ongoing, but with the additional equipment, as you can see in the verbiage that we supplied, there have been a tremendous amount of devices and equipment that have been added to our inventory that had to be part of this design that we're going out to with WSP. So with that being said, there is a need to pay additional funds for the additional equipment and such that were added to our system since then. So this is going to cover the cost of that. So seeking approval for the approval of the contract modification in the amount of $102,000.
Very good. No speakers on this, but I do need a motion for this. Moved by Leonetti, supported by Lucido. Please vote. And last item for Brian is 7F, Contract Z Contractors, Romeo Plank Bridge over North Branch, Clinton River, $453,429.87. Brian.
Yes, seeking approval of a construction contract with Z Contractors. They were the low bidder on this particular project. And it is Romeo Plank Bridge crossing the north branch of Clinton River, which is in Ray Township on Romeo Plank between 31 and 32 Mile Road.
Can moved by Brown, supported by Drollet. Any questions on this item? Chair Smith?
Brian, I don't have a comment on this, but I just want to apologize for not catching earlier that you were, your items would be so short and you were behind a presentation there. Try to alleviate that next time if it happens, so no worries. Thanks.
Okay, seeing no other speakers, please vote.
You don't have any extra money for roads? No. I have some capital improvement projects that I can.
Thanks again for your patience, Brian.
He's the chair.
Appreciate your patience. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll go into item 8, correspondence. Can I get a motion to receive and file A through D, moved by Drollet, supported by Kraft? Please vote for receive and file of the correspondence. And then we'll go on to new business, commissioners. Any new business? Chair Smith?
We have a SEMCOG General Assembly down at Cobo on Thursday. I know, anybody planning on attending?
I'm going to try to.
All right. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. What? I'll turn that mic on? I'm sorry. What is that? Thank you.
Any other new business? Seeing no one else on new business, public participation, no one from the public. Motion to adjourn, moved by Drollet, supported by Kraft. Please vote. Meeting's adjourned.